Well, Bob Unruh, is that correct, Bob?
That's good, thank you.
I don't want to mispronounce your name. Bob Unruh is the news editor for WorldNet Daily. Also, you can find it at WND.com. And he's written an interesting article that I wanted to bring to your attention, having to do, believe it or not, with the challenging of the AIG financing. It's sort of a sideways way to come to a subject. And I wanted to bring it to your attention. He wrote an article for WorldNet Daily that I think we should be talking about. Bob, why don't you set the stage and tell us a little bit about this lawsuit and how it is that Islamic law would have anything to do with AIG?
Certainly. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. It's not terribly complicated. The AIG bailout, of course, by the federal government involving, billions of dollars. I think it was like 70 or 90 billion dollars that was involved. That was meant to prop up that company and allow it to continue. Well, AIG has had and continues to have divisions that work specifically with Sharia-compliant finance. The Quran provides specific instructions regarding borrowing and lending, so that those instructions are followed in these divisions of this company. This lawsuit was brought by a Marine out of Michigan. The Thomas More Law Center is handling the case, and their contention is that the taxpayers now own a majority, it was like 89% or 79% of the company because of this buyout or this bailout. So essentially taxpayer money is being used to provide this indoctrination of Sharia law into the United States. They're saying that taxpayer money can't be used to do this indoctrination, and their lawsuit is over that issue.
And that lawsuit was dismissed recently, correct?
At the district court level, this Judge Lawrence Zatkoff said, we're going to dismiss the case. There's nothing here to argue. It's perfectly fine. Taxpayer money can fund Sharia. Well, the alarming implication of that is that Sharia then could be funded by any one of a multitude of federal aid programs. If you're going to allow it in one, why would you not allow it in others? The law firm, the Thomas More Law Center, is highly alarmed about that because it essentially sets up as acceptable inside the United States under the Constitution the public funding of Sharia law.
I think it's a really interesting way to be looking at it and arguing it. I've been troubled. I'm an attorney, and I'm licensed to practice both in Connecticut and in New York. You're listening to the Lisa Wexler Show, and I'm speaking with Bob Unruh, news editor of WorldNet Daily. I'm very interested in this because I have been disturbed to note that some of the most white shoe law firms in the country, particularly in Connecticut, believe it or not, have decided to establish an entire arm of their legal practice devoted to Sharia law compliance. I was rather shocked at this.
And, I think American citizens need to be aware of what's going on. In Minnesota, of course, one of the charter schools, the publicly funded charter schools, is in a huge fight right now because it is set up specifically for Muslims to teach Muslims by Muslims. Well, it's a tax-supported school. If I or you or one of your listeners says, well, I want tax money, I want to start a Methodist school for my Methodist children, or Baptist, or Lutheran, or Buddhist, or Hindu, or something like that, eyebrows would raise immediately. Why is that not going on here? And this judge's opinion, the law firm, of course, this decision is being appealed. I think it's to the Sixth Circuit Court. Is that the district that's in? Anyway, yes, the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. It is being appealed because they're alarmed. The folks at the law firm are alarmed at the precedent that this would set.
So let's talk about what Sharia-compliant financing is so that we're not really, making people think, oh, this is a bugaboo that they know nothing about. Tell us about what does it mean to have Sharia-compliant financing?
Well, the Quran has specific instructions regarding payment and acceptance of interest. True Muslims who follow the Quran are not allowed to pay or accept interest, which means that anytime they do a financing in Western society, of course, that would conflict because to get a credit card, to have a home mortgage, to have all sorts of things like this, it involves interest. What the Quran provides for in Sharia-compliant financing is it sets up other ways around this. other regulations, rules, fees, and things like that avoids interest. I think a lot of us would like interest-free loans, but that's not exactly what it is.
No, that's not what it is. It's basically a paper triangle, if you will, some kind of a paper, what would be the word, like an artifice, in order to do the same business that they do in the Western society, but pat themselves on the back and say that they're complying with their religious law. And I'll tell you the truth, there is a very parallel, I don't know if you're aware of this, Bob, but there's a parallel way of doing business among the ultra-Orthodox Jews, but it has never been something that has ever been brought to a civil court to enforce or to deny. There are rabbinic courts that are set up that are strictly religious. In other words, if you want to belong to a very religious society and you want to say, I want to lend money in accordance with the dictates of the Torah, then you do this. I call it an artificial paperwork. It's my opinion because I know that the people are still getting interest. But anyway, they're doing what they have to do to think that they're religiously compliant. But it in no way ever involves the enforcement by a civil judge. They understand that this is a religious way of doing business. It's a religious way of life, and they keep it out of the American courts. What upsets me is this is a totally different approach.
Absolutely, and you're totally right. If any two people one wants to borrow, one wants to lend, they can set up any sort of civil agreement, and say, I'm borrowing $10,000. I repay it at 11 payments of $1,000.
Right.
That's just an agreement. That's a contract. Mm-hmm. And you being an attorney, I'm not. Don't pretend to be one, but I've watched a lot of them work. You can reach any sort of civil agreement like that. But yes, this is different because number one, it's tax money.
Yeah,
it's your tax money and my tax money going to support the promotion of the Quran, of Sharia law. Secondly, here we have a federal judge approving that, saying that there's nothing wrong with that. And that type of precedent, left unchallenged or unturned, would have huge implications.
Well, and it will, because yesterday data came out that, I don't know if you saw this, that within 20 years, 1 in 4 people on this earth will belong to the Muslim faith. And for purposes of the United States of America, there will be 6.2 million Muslims in this country, which is a doubling of the Muslim population. So we need to work this out so that the Muslim minority in this country is treated with the same respect that any other minority is treated, but not preferred.
You're absolutely right, because if you look around the world, when Muslims start reaching 10, 15, and 20% of the population, then Sharia law becomes an integral factor of that nation's life. There are Sharia courts now operating in the United Kingdom.
I know that. I know. It makes me sick.
75 or 80. Yeah. They operate in parallel with the government courts. I mean, just imagine, I'm in Colorado. Just imagine in the county of Denver, you had the Denver County Court, and then you had the Denver County Sharia Court.
No, what's bad about it is, from my point of view, is that their treatment of women is completely subpar. And that in the family systems, women that feel that because of the impositions of their custom, because of their real life, in other words, not their so-called legal rights, but the way they live, they would feel like they need to comply with the Sharia law judge, and therefore their rights are usually completely extinguished, and it's very troubling to me.
You're very right. You may know more about these particular. Understanding is that under Sharia, a woman inherits only half of what a male would in the same circumstances. And of course there are a lot of the fine print, so to speak, like that would be highly alarming to a lot of the American population itself.
Yeah, exactly. Men and women in America, mm-hmm. I like to think, like the fact that women are equal in terms of under the law.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. And this to me, in other words, if this was, I suppose that I would not be so hysterically upset about it if, knowing the content of this Sharia law, I understood that it was similar to the way Americans treated the law. But I know that the growth of Sharia law is a very bad thing for women. And it troubles me terribly. And I know that it's the Muslim women who will most suffer. In other words, they come to the United States as a refuge. The first-generation immigrant families are typically fleeing regimes that are repressive. They don't want this here either.
That's why they leave. you're absolutely right. There's no question that some of these things are concerning and really conflict with the established precedents that we have in American law. That's why states like Oklahoma already did vote to forbid the use of Sharia law in its civic courts. Texas is considering that.
But you saw what happened in Oklahoma.
The bounce back was immediate. The lawsuit was there. And a judge suspended enforcement of the law.
That's what I mean. The judge suspended enforcement of the law. But I think the people of Oklahoma made a point, and that point won't soon be forgotten.
No, because other states are starting to take that up.
Yeah.
I mean, what happens when you have one state doing it? Oh, it's a renegade state, or it's an odd state legislator. They don't know what they're doing. They didn't think things through. But all of a sudden, when you have 2, 3, 4, 5, or 10 states that are moving forward with something like this, then you have to look at it seriously and say, well, there's a legitimate concern.
Well, I think that the truth is that there is a worldwide ideological battle, and that the United States, we're fighting other battles with tanks and things that I frankly do not necessarily approve of, or don't think that it's the right strategy. But I think when it comes to this, we have to say the barricades are up, and we have to protect what is best about Western culture. And this is one of the barricades. This is one of the things that's very important to fight for, and to fight against federal intrusion of money to support this. So I'm totally behind the people who are fighting this good fight, and I appreciate, Bob Unruh, you bringing it to our attention. Well, I thought that was a really interesting conversation with Bob Unruh, and I thought it was really important to bring to your attention some of the things that are going on behind the scenes right now in our country. I think it's important that we're aware, because there are larger cultural wars, and in so many ways, the wars that we fight at home in terms of clinging to that which is best about our culture and getting rid of that which is worst are the most important battles that we have to fight. And they're complex, and they're in different venues, and they're not with tanks, and they're not with bullets. But they're really important nonetheless. And so I think we have to remember and respect what is best about Western culture, what is best about a modern society. And of course, it comes with it, in my view, excess vulgarity, occasionally excess exploitation and sexuality. There's a lot of excesses that we need to temper, and that we need to watch, and that we need to get rid of in some cases. But there's also a lot which is great about living in America, not just the freedom that